Okay, we're going to take a look at cryin. Two main guitar parts really. We've got a sort of broken up, cleanish, not clean, but cleanish, broken up guitar chord going throughout the song, and we've got the main motif, quite full-on kind of sounding guitar, which is what I'm going to use the Les Paul for. So the intro goes like this. So it's all, the song is in the key of G minor. It's all kind of very pentatonic based. It's in the box shape of the position 1 pentatonic. And we're on the G string, giving a real vibey bend. I mean, it's not set in stone, this. You just want to really vibe it up and bend that string from the 5 to the 7 and come down in the most kind of frantic way you can. We're landing on that 3rd fret and giving a little half, a little bluesy bend. I'm kind of pushing the string up with my 1st finger. And then let kill the note, so it kind of lands and then dies, if you know what I'm saying. It goes like this. And then the next one does the similar sort of thing, but we've got to kind of hammer on and pull off. Same thing again. And then a real frantic one at the end. Underneath that, it's not so much a chord, it's more of a riff. It does this. So we're kind of landing on a G5, really. We're going on the A string from the 1st fret to the 3rd fret, and then 1st fret to the 3rd fret on the E string. And the chord is more implied than actually thrashed away and played. It's just more implied. You're kind of chugging away. I'm playing a G, it's kind of like a G5. But I'm kind of holding that one note with my 2nd finger, muting the A string, and letting the D and the G string kind of ring. And on the last one, we go to a B flat. So on that last little sequence, we're just landing on a B flat, and I've got my 1st finger on the 1st fret of the A string, and my 3rd or 4th finger on the 3rd fret of the D string, and we're just landing on that sort of a B flat 5. So the first verse goes like this. So we've got some pretty simple chords there. We've got a straight A major chord to an E major chord. Just breaking the chord up, kind of going up and down, picking individual notes, sort of an arpeggio kind of style. To the F sharp minor. It's like barring the 2nd fret, all the 6 strings, and we're on the 4th fret and of the A string and the D string. Most times I kind of put my thumb over to hold the bottom part of the chord, the root note, but you can play it like that. But I play it kind of like that. Then we go to a D flat minor, barring the 5th fret of from the A string upwards, and I'm on the 5th fret of the E string and the 6th fret of the D and the G string. To a straight D major chord, to the A major chord. Then we land on this E major chord. I'm just putting a little movement in there just to make it interesting, but you can just quite happily just strum that. You can just pick that E major chord, you know, twice if you like. I'm just going, the little run I did is just going up an E major scale to land on an E major in this position. You can try that if you like. Each time we land on that E major chord, a little something happens on the track, and each time we get there, I'll show you what it is. But that's the first verse. Okay, the bridge section. We've got two chords mainly for the bridge section. It starts on a G5 and a D5. But interestingly, the first note we hear is actually a D note. I'll show you what I mean. I'll play the little motif that's going on. It goes like this. So, if you can imagine, it's basically G and D. Going to a C, to the G, to an E. But we've got a classic little rock and roll movement. It's kind of this we're after. But interestingly, if you listen hard, the first note you hear for that little kind of rock and roll riff sort of thing is a D note. So it starts on a D note and then lands on a D chord, if you know what I'm saying, although it's over a G chord. It goes like this. So, which is quite curious, but it works because this D note is the fifth from the G. So it is what it is. We start on that A5. And we're going up on the E string from the 6 to the 7, and back on the A5 again. Then we hit just sort of suggest that D5, and we do the same sort of thing in the D position, which would be on the A string, going from the 8 to the 9 on the A string, and hit the kind of little D kind of sound there on the 7th fret on the D string and the G string. So if I put that together, you get this kind of sound. Obviously, the second time I hit that G chord. Carries on with going to the C, and it's the same similar sort of rock and roll thing, but just slightly different phrasing. Does this. So it's a similar little movement. We're going from the C chord, and I'm hitting that part of the C chord after doing on the A string, which is the 6th fret and the 7th fret. Same thing on the G. Well, it's exactly the same position, just move down the strings. So hit the G5 chord. So I'm going up from the 6 and the 7 on the E string and hitting that part of the G chord. You might want to just land on that kind of 7th fret on the E string again. If I put both parts together, you'll see what I mean. It's really slowly. And then we go to this kind of big build up on an E chord. Wherever you like to do it, I'm starting low, and then go to. So I'm starting low, just really playing the E and the A string, holding the A2, sort of an E5 chord. Then going up to an E5 chord on the 7th fret, but letting the B string and the E string ring, so I get a nice open sound. I can play all 6 strings. I'm only holding that 7th on the A, and on the 9th fret on the D and the G string, so I'm only holding 3 notes. So we're into our first big chorus, and it goes like this. Very similar chords to the verse. It goes like this. very similar chords. We've got the A major to the E major to the F sharp minor, back to the D. A major to an E major to the D. And if you listen hard, you can hear a little. It's kind of in a D major position up the top there. It's kind of the 6th interval. 10th fret on the E string and 11th fret on the G string. And then move that up to the 12th fret on the G and the E string. Got a little country kind of sort of feel to it. You don't have to play that, you could just power through the D chord if you like. But if you listen hard, it goes over that D chord. So that's basically the premise of the chorus. I'm just going to play it for you one more time, because these choruses are very similar once they happen. I'll play it for you slightly slower. You can give a slightly more power to maybe to your picking hand, just to give it a little bit more sort of guts to the guitar. So slightly slower. So after I'm finishing the round of the chord sequence from the D to the A to the E, and we land on that D. And if you listen hard, there's a classic one of those on and off, which is like holding a D chord. I'm only concentrating on the G2 and the B3 with my first and second fingers, and with my third finger doing the like to a D6, on and off from the G string on the 4th fret. Then we're back into our motif part. It goes like this. So it's just slightly different phrasing to the first time we hear it. I don't know if I told you the first time, but the first little notes you play are the kind of holding the G and the B string on the 3rd fret, going up to that 5th fret on the G. That's the kind of first initial thing you play. And then it's the same as what we did before, but slightly more frantic. If you listen hard, he doesn't resolve that. It kind of just stays on that 4th one. It just stays on that 5th fret note on the G string. And it's left hanging. There's a vocal over the top of that. You've got to listen hard behind Steve Tyler's vocal. Okay, for this second verse, very similar to the first verse, we've got on the second half of it, we've got an introduction of a little harmony guitar. But I'll show you the chords again, and I'll show you what happens at the end of the verse. There's a little run that goes into the bridge. But here we go, it goes like this. So you can see there's 2 rounds, exactly the same as the first time we did it. Just ending on the E chord, the ending of the verse, doing a little run. On the 4th fret of the A string, coming down to the 2nd fret, and a little kind of bluesy bend on the E string from the second, sort of bending it up, sort of a little quarter note, off to the open E string, and then a kind of a landing for that G note for our bridge chord. But we're going up from the A4 to the D2 to the D4, then landing on that G, ready for that G chord for the bridge. The second round of those verse chords, we have quite a sweet sounding harmony guitar going on, a layered harmony guitar. Now, chances are, if you're going to play this with your band, you're not going to do this part. But there is a part that I've checked out live footage of the band, and Joe Perry does a single line thing. But I'll show you what's going on the track. It's kind of basically 3 harmonies. We'll start with the highest one, which is what Joe Perry would play live. And it goes like this. So that's the first kind of harmony. That's what Joe Perry plays live. We're starting on the 12th fret on the B string. I'm playing it all on the B string to make it sort of life easy. Bending up from the 12 to the 14. That's the first. We're going 14, landing on the 12. Come down to the 9th fret. And you want a 1 fret bend going from the 9 to the 10. Then down to the 5th fret, and we want a whole tone bend, which is 2 frets. And then it's kind of very hard to hear how the actual line ends, but I'm just doing a little kind of from the second on the 2nd fret to the open B, kind of just to create the chord as we build up the harmony. So one more time, slightly slower. Then we have the harmony underneath that, which isn't played live, but I'll show it to you in case you want to play it or just play along to the track. It goes like this. So we're starting on the 13th fret, bending up to the 14th fret, with just a little one fret bend. Then down to the 9th fret, bend up 2 frets. Then down to the 6th fret, and that's a little 1 fret bend. And then come off from the 4th fret to the 1st fret. So the last chord, the last note we're making, makes up a kind of a E major triad. So the harmony that goes underneath that does this. So it's real hard to hear that harmony, but so there's no bends involved, but it's working really nicely, kind of in a kind of a bass part. It's kind of working almost like in harmony to the bass player. But we start on the 14th fret. We're all on the D string now, going from the 14th fret to the 9th fret. Next little phrase goes like this, from the 11th fret to the 6th fret. Then we go from the 7th fret to the 2nd fret. And then pull off from the 4th fret to the 2nd fret on the A string. Okay, now we're into the bridge section. Very similar, but this time, instead of starting on a D note, it starts on its root note, which is the G, which makes life simpler. It goes like this. So, we're starting on the G, doing a little kind of rock and roll run, same as we did the first time, to the D, back to the G, to that D, exactly the same as we did before. There's a little different phrasing on that second time it hits that D. Kind of refer heavily to the record, but it's not kind of in the pocket, it's kind of slightly anticipated. So if I play it to you slightly slower, you'll get what I mean. So I'm just ending that phrase with a coming up on the A string from the 8 to the 9. Landing on our two little kind of D notes in the chord, which is on the 7th fret, on the D and the G. And then with my third finger coming on and off from the 9th fret to the 7th on the D. Quite a nice little lick if you want to steal that anyway. Then we go down to the C, as we did before. So C on the C5 on the 3rd fret on the A and a 5th fret on the D, with our little rock and roll run from the 6th to the 7th, landing on that 5th on the D to the G. Then we build up on this kind of E chord, and if you listen hard, you can hear a little lick happening over that build-up of the E chord, and it's on the G and the E string on the 4th fret basically, and you're kind of sliding up to it. Kind of works really nicely, just building up over that E chord. So I'll play that whole section for you one more time, slightly slower. Then we're into a second chorus, similar sort of chords, and there's a little lick in there which I'll show you, but the chords go like this again. So they're the same chorus chords as we did the first time. What I didn't play there is I'm going to show you now. When we're in the middle of that verse, there's a little lick in there, works in between the vocal, and it goes something like this. Works on over the D chord in the middle of the chorus. Really and truly, it should be kind of like a double stop bend played like this, but because I've got a tremolo on this whole strat, it doesn't like the tuning as I bend up. That note goes flat, so I'm trying to play it as a sort of a pick thing, but if I can try and compensate, it should sound like this. Anyway, the actual part is sliding up on the G string to the 11th fret, and landing on that 10th fret on the E, going up to the 12th fret on the G and the E, and then if you want to try the double stop way, you're kind of holding that note on the 10th fret on the B and bending this up with your third finger, bending from the 9 to the 11 on the G string. If I can just, as I pull the bar up, it stays in tune, but because I'm kind of... So in order to sort of counteract that, I'm kind of playing it like this. Sliding up from on the G string from the 9 to the 11. And hitting that 10 on the B. And we come down to land on an A note. So it kind of sounds like this. just coming down from the, which is the 9 to the 7 on the G, and the 9 to the 7 on the D. And that note lands where we hit the A chord. You'll see how it kind of fits in when I do the performance. While we're on the chorus, it's worth thinking about if you're playing with another guitar player and you're playing this song, it's just supposing there's 2 guitar players in your band, like there are in Aerosmith. Definitely on the track, we've got different inversions of these kind of chorus chords and probably the verse chords. So if I'm playing the first A chord there, chances are, if your friend or somebody can play that in a different position, let me just try and play this chorus in the kind of different inversion, see what you think, see how it sounds. Kind of just gives, I'm goofing around, but it just kind of gives a sort of another colour to the chord. And if there's 2 of you doing it, it's not going to sound too cool if you're both in the same position. So have a little think about working out some different voicings and different inversions of those kind of simple chords. But that's up to the second chorus, and now we're going to move on to the guitar solo. Okay, moving on to the guitar solo. It's kind of like a variation of our actual intro kind of motif guitar. Before I play it, it's the usual chords underneath, like we did on the intro. It goes like this. So it's the same as we did on the intro, but here is the actual guitar solo. It's a very cool sounding guitar solo. And I wouldn't stress too much about actually copying exactly the phrasing, because I've watched Joe Perry a number of times live, and he does a kind of a variation each time on a theme. So don't stress too much, just get something close to what's going on the record. But what is going on the track is this. So we're up at the 17th fret on the G string, giving a kind of a 17 to 19 frantic bend. Coming down to the 17, on and off from the 15 to the 17, and land on that 17 on the D. So you get this. In fact, the longer you can leave that last little, it's left to the very last beat of that bar before he actually kind of phrases that little last. So it's real, if I try and play it in time for you. You can see I've left it right to the last kind of millisecond before you go into the phrase again. So that's kind of coming up from that 17 on the D. 15, 17 on the G, bend up, on and off again, 15, 17, and land again at the last minute on that 17 on the D. So I'm going to put those 2 phrases together. Then we get this a really sort of cool kind of playing in fourths kind of idea. It's all on the G, basically on the G and the B string, and I'm going to kind of try and play it slightly slower. It goes like this for the next phrase. So it's kind of barring the G and the B string on the 15th, and then with your third finger hammer on to the 17th fret on the same strings. And once you've done that, kind of pull both strings so they kind of sound like they're going. So you kind of pull them towards the floor. It's kind of the phrase you're going for. It's a real cool little lick. And then play the same idea, but pick it this time, so you get this kind of sort of thing. So if I put those two little phrases together, so with the beginning part, so you can see if I slow this down, this last little phrase. So I'm coming on and off. It's all on the 15 and the 17. Coming from the 17 on the D, back up to that 15. And then we get a kind of a phrase that does this. So we're barring on the G and the B string on the 15th fret, hammer on to the 17th fret, same strings, and sort of give it a pull towards the ground. And this time, do the same sort of thing again, but pick the notes this time. So I'm going 15th fret, 17th fret, 18th fret, slide down, double pick, pull off to the 15, 17 on the D, and back up to the 15. It's kind of one of those licks that's kind of easier to play faster than it is slower. But I'll try and play it for you again. It goes like this. Then we go up to the next phrase, which does this. So this is quite frantic, but we're bending up on the G string from the 17 to the 19, and then go with our first finger holding the 15 on the B and the E, back down to that B. Then we're on the 18th fret, which is kind of a cool little bluesy bend. You're kind of bending from the 18 to the 20. Coming back down to the 18, but kind of not quite resolving it. Give it a little bluesy kind of vibe to it. Then a very quick little flick, kind of holding the 15 on the E and pulling off from the 18 to the 15 on the B. So if I put that together, next little phrase goes like this, just to finish it off. So I'm bending up from the 18 to the 20 again on the E string. Pull off to the 15. And then we've got a series of kind of, as frantic as you can really. I'm on the 18 on the B, bending up a tone bend to the 20. And then as I've bent the string up, I'm catching that 18 on the E. So basically, that's the framework, and you just need to play. It's quite a frantic sounding solo. I'm going to have another shot at it, and it might have a slight variation on it, but just to show you the framework. It goes like this. Coming out of the solo, the vocal takes over, but if you listen hard behind the vocal, there is a kind of little lick going on over the chord sequence. So before I show you the chord sequence, this is what's going on underneath the vocal. Okay, this is a very cool little part. Kind of almost like a unison bend thing. We're on the 11th fret on the E string, holding that. That's kind of our root note, and I'm bending up from the 14 to the 16 on the B string, and then landing on that root note on the E string. Doing a similar sort of movement as the chord changes on the G and the B string. So I'm holding that 11 on the B now and bending up this G from the 13 to the 15. Back up to the B and the E string. Move that lick down 2 frets, which is going with the chord. Bending up from the 11 on the G to the 13. And I'm holding that root note, which is kind of the 9th fret on the B, up to the first shape we had to resolve it. So if I play that all slightly slower for you. At this point, we're building up on the E chord, and it does this. So the first little section is on the D and the B strings. That shape is on the 6th fret on the D and the 5th fret on the B. And if you look, I'm kind of picking, I'm sort of doing a little bit of a hybrid picking thing, whereas I'm using my plectrum to pick the D string, and I'm using my second finger to pick the B string, giving a nice little snap to the note. Move that up to the 7th fret on the D and the B string. Move it up to the 9th fret. Then we go to the 11th and the 10th. Then we leap to the G and the E string and do this kind of little country run. So that's the 13 on the G to the 12 on the E, to the 14 on the G and the E, to the 16 on the G and the E string. So if I put that whole phrase together slightly slower, it's on the build-up of the E chord underneath, which I'll show you in a second. That's basically the solo guitar in the solo section. So we're back with our rhythm guitar, and these are the chords that go in underneath the midsection. It's the section just after our initial guitar solo. It goes like this. So very simple chords. We're just on an E flat on the, if you put your root note on the 6th fret on the A, and then with my little finger, you can use your 3rd finger if you like, I'm barring the D, the G and the B string on the 8th fret. Down to a sort of a B5 really, B flat 5. So that's simply the 6th fret and the 8th fret on the A and the D string. Slide that B flat down to an A flat, which is on the 4th fret. Back to our first E flat shape. Then when you build up, like we had that country run, this is where the build up is. This is just holding an E chord however you like to do it really, but I'm kind of holding that open sort of E5 on the 7th fret. And it's nice to give it a little deep build up as well. So that section again goes like this. Okay, now we've reached our kind of outro chorus section. There's a little thing in here to catch you out. They've been very sly in that they've just flipped the chords around slightly. I'll show you what I mean, but here's the section. It goes like this. So I was just building up on that D chord at the end there, but I don't know if you've noticed where the catch is, where they've kind of been quite crafty. Initially, every time we've played the chorus chords, we've gone A major, E major to our F sharp minor to the D. But very cool that they've changed it. They've changed it to this: A major to E major, and then we go to the D flat minor instead of that F sharp minor. It sounds very cool. You kind of don't notice it until you actually try and play it, and you think, they've done a little flip there, which is kind of crafty. Up to the D, as we usually do. To the A. And we've got a build up on the D, as per usual. Back to the A. To the E. And then this is where Steve Tyler does his soulful kind of vocal. We land on that F sharp minor. So it's kind of one bar rest, really. So come back in on the D. Then we've got a long kind of build up on that D. On the track, it's kind of a do that if you like. I did a little kind of build up going to different inversions, kind of from the D to the D there, and then maybe right at the top of the octave. Kind of just build it up, just do it to taste, see what you think, see how you like it. But that's the kind of the initial introduction before we get into the harmonica solo. The chords underneath the harmonica solo, they have a little kind of arrangement too. Initially it's the same, but then the second time round we do a little kind of another little flip of the chords. So underneath the harmonica solo, it goes like this. So you can see there's another new little arrangement there. Initially it's the same as the first time we did it on the outro, which is the E, A to the E, to the D flat minor, to the D, back to the A, to the E, then to the D. Now we get a kind of a clever kind of little arrangement of the chords in that we're kind of having the bass rise, but still using sort of part of the chords. I'll show you what I mean. We start on the A, then we do go to an E, but we accent this root, kind of this B note, which is on the A2. So instead of hitting that low, we go from the A to the E chord, but playing that B note. And then the next chord we're doing is kind of like we're going to an F sharp minor, but now we're going. It's kind of back to an A major chord, which is very similar to an F sharp minor. Playing this as the root note. It's kind of so you can get where they're going with it. The bass is going up. So that's the chord on that kind of D flat note. Holding that A, and it's kind of almost like a third in the bass for A over C sharp, really. Then we hit this D major chord. So the bass note has gone up to there on the 5th fret on the A string. And I'm simply playing the kind of almost like a C shape D major. My little finger on the A5, third finger on the D4, my first finger on the G2, and my second finger on the B3, you get that. Carrying on up, we go back to where we would normally go back to the A chord there. We're playing the A chord there, so now that's in the root. If you imagine A major there, we're just going to play these three notes there, which is on the A7, the D7, and the G6. And you can also ring those B and E strings if you like. And where we'd normally go to the E chord there, we're doing it up here now, with our open ringing Bs and Es on the top two strings. And then we just build up on the D for twice round. So it's a clever little arrangement. Check it out. It's nice to play along to. And over the top of that little arrangement, we've got a little guitar, lead guitar that sort of soars in. But I'm just going to play you those two rounds of chords again, just so you can see how it's working. It goes like this. So I'm back with the Les Paul now, just to show you that sort of lead break that sort of soars in after the harmonica solo. It goes like this. Okay, we start the solo with a little 1 fret bend from the 16 to the 17. Back down again. I'm on the E string. We get this cool little phrase. It's a kind of a little flick. So I'm hammering on from the 16 to the 17 on the E string, pulling off from the 17 to the 16 to the 14, and then kind of hammering back on again. So if you imagine I've got my little finger on the 17th fret, my third finger on the 16th fret, and my first finger on the 14th fret, and I'm kind of keeping it glued there. So if I do that little phrase again, then we've got this little bluesy bend from the 17 to the 19. So I'm kind of hitting the 17 on the E, and bending up, leaping to the B string, bending up from the 17 to the 19. Then we get this phrase after that, does this. So I'm kind of holding with my little finger that 17th fret on the B and kind of doing a double stop bend, coming down to the 16th fret on the G, and then the 14th fret on the G. We've got that kind of little. So while I'm doing that phrase, I'm still holding that with my little finger, that 17th fret on the B, bending up and down on the G string from the 16th fret to the 18th fret. Back down to the 14 on with my first finger, still with that little kind of key note there. And then we've got this little phrase at the end. So I'm coming up from the 14 to the 16 on the D, 14 to the 16 on the G, pull off, back to the 14 on the D, 16 on the D, and then on and off on the G string on the 14 and 16. So I'm going to play the whole solo slightly slower for you, just so you can see how it all kind of fits together. Initially, when you listen to that solo at the end there, he does start off kind of almost duplicating the melody, which is a cool idea. Whenever if you're recording or you're doing a session or something, it's always cool to kind of link your guitar solo to what's going on with the vocal. So he starts kind of with the actual ad-lib part of the outro in this kind of melodic fashion. It does this. Which is duplicating what Steve Tyler is almost doing with his voice. It's all very A major pentatonic. Then he kind of goes off soloing. So just start the phrase in that, and maybe start melodically that way, and then kind of go off. Try your own sort of solo out on the outro, because it is on the fade. The chord sequence goes like this underneath it. So that's all the component parts for the song. It's all pretty free form, apart from that motif guitar at the beginning, which does this. That's the kind of part that you have to get really your teeth into. The rest is quite free form, and even live, I watched Aerosmith do it. They twist and turn with it, so they never play the same thing twice. Try some ad-lib guitar solo stuff at the end there. On the performance, I'm just going to do some kind of Joe Perry style guitar on the outro. It's very much behind the vocal. Try and start melodic, and then you can maybe go off a bit more. But they're the component parts, and I hope you like it.